Namaste. I'm Alakananda Ma, Ayurvedic doctor and principal of Alandi Ayurveda Gurukula, an Ayurveda school in Boulder, Colorado. So last week we talked about how to avoid getting COVID. This week let's talk about why. Why should you avoid getting infected or reinfected? We'll start with a quote from the Ayurvedic text, Madhav Nidan. Fever was born long ago from the wrath of Lord Rudra, who had been insulted by Daksha. When I was a medical student in the early 1970s, it seemed as if the great age of infectious diseases was over, thanks to sanitation, immunization, and antibiotics. Yet the curse of Rudra has continued into the 21st century in new and unforeseen ways. When I think of the mythological origins of fever, I wonder whether the real cause of Rudra's wrath was not the agrarian revolution about 10,000 years ago. Animals and plants were domesticated, and humans began to tame the wildness of nature, which Rudra embodies. With its consequences of increased number and concentration of population, settled rather than nomadic living, and close contact with domestic animals and birds, the agrarian revolution led to the development of infectious diseases not seen among forager tribes. From measles to COVID, we have suffered the scourge of zoonotic diseases. From the Ayurvedic standpoint, fever is taken very seriously. We're advised to look not only at its acute phase, but at the ways it, like other types of disease, can become chronic and penetrate deeper into the body, affecting multiple systems. This is definitely the case with COVID. There's no evidence to support the view that a mild or asymptomatic case of Omicron, it's just Omicron, will not have long-term consequences. And there is no solid reason to believe that vaccines will completely protect you from this aspect of the disease. For today, we'll look into the ways COVID could affect your long-term health even after you seem to be over it. Next week, we'll delve more into long COVID itself, but this week we'll look at implications for everyone who's had COVID. And remember, these effects are going to be compounded by having COVID more than once. Unfortunately, COVID is not one and done like measles, and each reinfection will have worse consequences for your immune system. Yes, that's right. COVID ages and weakens your immune system, rendering you more vulnerable to other infections or to getting COVID again. You might have heard of T cells and how HIV affects them. COVID also isn't good for your T cells, or for that matter, your B cells either. Not only does COVID age and weaken your immune system, but also, similarly to Epstein-Barr virus, COVID causes immune dysregulation. This can lead to the development of autoantibodies that attack your own tissues. Some COVID survivors have been found to have antibodies that target the brain, thyroid, blood vessels, central nervous system, platelets, kidneys, heart, and liver. This could lead to a host of future illnesses, from glomerulonephritis, an autoimmune kidney disease, to thyroid disease, to bleeding disorders, to lupus. COVID also has effects on your blood. According to a new study published in the British Medical Journal, or BMJ, your chances of getting a blood clot in your cough, also known as a DVT, are significantly increased for 3 weeks after COVID. Your chances of a life-threatening blood clot on your lungs, or pulmonary embolism, is increased for 6 weeks after COVID, and your chances of a bleeding disorder are increased for 2 months. And there are other vascular complications with COVID as well. The risk of stroke is more than twice as high for COVID-19 patients when compared to people of the same age, sex, and ethnicity in the general population. Yes, younger adults are getting strokes during and after COVID. There's also an increased risk of heart attack in the weeks after a COVID diagnosis. Again, we're talking about adults in midlife, not just about the elderly. Then there's the issue of your brain on COVID. Evidence is mounting to suggest that even a mild case of COVID will shrink your brain and reduce the amount of gray matter. It's highly likely that COVID will predispose people to early onset dementia and to Parkinson's disease. Now remember, these are all effects of COVID on previously healthy people of all ages. Effects that can be experienced after a mild case that doesn't require hospitalization. COVID is not just a cold or flu. It's not something to get over with. It's a potentially disabling multi-system disease. And remember, it's worth avoiding COVID even if you've already had it, because the long-term negative effects are cumulative. That's it for this week. We'll talk about long COVID next week. Namaste. See you next week. Bye.